How's it going, guys? Sean here. And this is a knife you guys have never seen before. It's actually a new Malanika Puukko. And this one is an LMAX steel. So I have been doing a lot of discussion with Daniel from Malanika, the Puukko maker, the gentleman who's made the beautiful stacked birch bark Puukko that you guys are very familiar with. And I've been wanting to do a limited sprint run with very high-end knife steel, simply because I just love Daniel's work so much. Okay, so I have been wanting to invest into bringing you guys some really exotic steels, much like what Spyderco does. The reason why I'm doing this, and you really have to understand where I'm coming from on this, is not to get rich, not to become a freaking knife-making millionaire, because that's just not going to happen. But it's really for selfish reasons. It's really because I have an insatiable passion for cutlery. It's a fire that just burns deep inside me, and I want the best. I want the highest performing knives possible. And seeing that Daniel was willing to work with me, seeing how well his knives performed, I just knew that an opportunity like this doesn't come always so easy. And that here I have a chance to work with the maker to bring a steel that I feel like is not on the market, a steel that I want, okay? This is something that I've wanted, but just nobody simply makes it. And that I feel will be the top performing Puukko steel. So, unfortunately, to my discovery, that's not going to be LMAX. And for reasons that we'll discuss in a later video, and I'll review this knife, LMAX is a great steel, and we'll talk about maybe those reasons in other videos. But what I have here are the limited edition sprint run Puukkos. And I have painstakingly went through the process of ordering the steel, having the blanks cut, and heat treated on my own to send off to Croatia, because this is how badly I want to bring this high performance steel to you guys and have Daniel work his craftsmanship on them and make beautiful Malanika Puukkos in a very exclusive steel. Alright. So, very exciting stuff. Now, unfortunately, these aren't going to be super cheap. We just have to get that out of the way right now. And even though the material cost is maybe about, I don't know, let's say only 3 times the cost of something like the 52-100 that Daniel uses, just the cost of doing something like the heat treat and the process that the heat treat requires, it's just not as simple as taking a piece of carbon steel, heating it cherry red, and dipping it in some oil, and then tempering it. Alright, PM steels require a much more complex heat treating process. That's also going into the cost factor when you're buying those S110V knives and etc. These aren't S110V, by the way. So, the reason why I've had to go ahead and do this process is because in little Croatia, there just simply isn't liquid nitrogen commercially available to the public. What a horrible thing, huh? How is the knife maker supposed to make a living if he doesn't have access to liquid nitrogen to work with all these beautiful high-end steels? And so in order to get around that, in order to get the steel also is an American steel. So with it being an American steel and with it requiring a more complex heat treat and more complex materials to bring it to the highest quality, I had to go through this process myself. That's the only reason why I'm involved with this. So, and it's really because of my own selfishness. I want the best. I want the best steel available for a Puukko that's not being developed. And Daniel has been kind enough to listen to me. So these right here have been sent off to Peter's heat treat. I've talked to Brad and I let him know exactly what I wanted. And if you don't know Brad from Peter's heat treat, he's the same guy who's heat treating Survive knives, their 3V and their 20 CPM 20 CV. and he does a really good job at that. And the man is just a complete expert, a craftsman in his knowledge when it comes to heat treating. So these are hardened to about 62, 63. These are a high-speed steel, powdered tool steel. If that doesn't give it away, I don't know what will. But definitely is going to have very, very high levels of wear resistance, edge retention. Everything at high levels except corrosion resistance is going to take a complete nosedive. And I am definitely willing to sacrifice corrosion resistance at the altar to get the highest performing blades for a Puukko. The reason being, from talking to Daniel, of course, when we talked about a Puukko is a wood carving knife first. First and foremost, a wood carving knife. And even the old Finnish tales talk of that a Puukko should be made of a good carbon steel, not a stainless. And for one reason is just the fact that you just get better edge stability when you reduce the amounts of chromium in the steel. It's just chromium by nature is brittle. So adding it in large amounts it's definitely a cost-benefit thing, okay? So if you want to go with a Ferrari, you're going to have to burn some more fuel. And that's exactly what these blade steels, or what this blade steel selection, that's kind of why it was selected and why I went through great lengths to bring this to you guys. So there's going to be 9 blades, and it's going to be a limited sprint run. And so there's going to be basically a sign-up list. And I thought it'd be cool to have a sign-up list, because that way, if you get on board the sign-up list, you can select what handle material you want. And Daniel will show you all the different handle materials he offers. And you can see, I mean, the guy is just definitely an artist in what he produces. It's just exquisite. And he's also making excellent sheaths for these. They'll come with a topi as well, with a much tighter design than on my original, because he's definitely been learning just every day. So it's very cool. Your selection of sheath color choice as well. So there you have it. This is kind of a basic rundown. These knives, blanks right here, are going to be sent off to Croatia for Daniel to work his magic. Now, as far as the grinding process, a lot of you guys that are knowledgeable about knives already know that these have been already heat treated and they're going to be ground down from full thickness. And I can already hear you. Won't that ruin the temper of the knife? No. What you have to understand is this is a high-speed tool steel. And high-speed tool steels have a lot of intrinsic properties that make them great. One of them being it has a very high red hardness. What the heck does that mean? A high red hardness means that these steels can withstand temperatures of 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit without ruining the temper. Alright? So it's very, very impressive. It's definitely one of the huge qualities of a high-speed steel, really designed for drill bits and things like that. But there's also intrinsic qualities that make them great knife blade steels. So what is the heat treatment process for these knives? And why can't it just be done by some dude in his garage? Why did it have to be sent to Brad at Peter's Heat Treatment? Well, in order to have an understanding of why the heat treating process is so complex on a PM steel, is the fact that because it's so carbide rich, because there's so many alloys and carbides packed inside here, when you heat treat any knife, what you're doing is moving around the furniture. But what do you do when the room is completely cluttered with tons of furniture? Well, you have to get all the molecules in the steel very, very excited, which means you have to bring it up to a very, very high temperature. So these blades have to be brought up in excess of 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. But that introduces more problems. So when you bring up steel to 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit in just your forge, what happens is the ambient oxygen robs the carbon from the steel, okay? It oxidizes it, robs it. So you can't have that. So in order to get this steel heat treated, it has to be either done in a vacuum furnace, which Brad has, or if it's done by a knife maker in his own shop, he needs to use a high temp foil, and it needs to be put inside of a kiln. And the temperatures have to be very exacting, all right? It's 2,000 degrees exactly, plus or minus 25, depending on what you're going for. From there, it has to be pulled out. It then has to be quenched. Some people use a vise with 2 giant slabs of aluminum to draw the heat out, or they use a forced air quench with a compressor, or a mixture of both. From there, it has to be tempered. Then the tempering process is three tempers at a very high temperature, almost to 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. From there, it then has to be quenched in liquid nitrogen. Okay, that's a cryo quench, not a sub-zero quench. Sub-zero, that's dry ice. It's simply not cold enough to really bring out the maximum amount of martensite, get rid of all the retained austenite. Okay? So that's why these steels have to be expertly heat treated, and that's why they definitely drive up the cost when you're working with material like this. It's not really something you can do in your backyard, and knife makers that do work with these steels have extensive knowledge, as well as a huge investment into the equipment to bring you guys these steels. So when you scoff at the prices of PM steels, just understand what goes in to the process behind them to bring you guys these very aggressive cutting knives, okay, that have a very high working sharpness, as well as just an insanely aggressive cutting edge nature. So I'm very, very excited about the steel. As the project gets closer, I'll definitely be revealing what the steel is. So stay tuned to my channel, and we will talk more about the limited Puukko sprint run. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care.